high esteem to do the business that the people have asked us to do in their stead. Please watch over us, make us, be with us as we make decisions that are pleasing in your sight. Lord, allow us to act in a professional, business-like manner, always knowing that we have you ahead of us in watching over us. And we thank you for listening to our prayer. Amen. I'll call this meeting to order. I'm going to do a voice roll call if you don't mind. Larry Bradley?
Here.
Ross Bradley?
Here.
Myosha Crawford? David Dickinson?
Here.
Norman Garrett?
Here.
Tyler Gregory?
Here.
Nathan Little?
Here.
Lee Malcolm? And we're going to try Myosha again. I don't see her popped up on the screen. We'll keep looking for her.
Ms. Malcolm is present. She's muted.
Right, I see Lee. I need a motion for the approval of the agenda, please.
So moved.
Is that Mr. Little?
Yes.
I have a motion by Mr. Nathan Little. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Ms. Malcolm. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please say yay or nay as we get to your name. Larry Bradley?
Yay.
Ross Bradley?
Yay.
Has Ms. Crawford joined us? No. David Dickinson?
Yay.
Norman Garrett?
Yeah.
Tyler Gregory?
Yay.
Nathan Little?
Yay.
Lee Malcolm?
Yay.
That passes. Moving to the approval of the consent agenda. This is from the January 5th and 12th council meetings, the 19th Planning Commission, HPC, Downtown Development Authority, CVB, Sun Inland Memorial Airport, fiber pricing, and the approval of sanitary sewer system improvements at the Alcovey River outfall. I need a motion for approval, please.
Move
So
to
moved.
approve.
I have a motion to approve by Mr. Dickinson, and I think that was a second by Mr. Ross Bradley.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, indicate by saying aye or nay. Larry Bradley? Ross Bradley?
Aye.
David Dickinson?
Aye.
Norman Garrett?
Aye.
Tyler Gregory?
Aye.
Nathan Little?
Yay.
Lee Malcolm?
Aye.
That passes. Motion carries. Moving to the public forum, we have nobody who signed up by 5 o'clock online. Did we have anybody show up downstairs?
No, sir.
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. We'll go straight to the public hearing for the variance at 1360 Armistead Circle. Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, this request, as we discussed last week, is to allow for a front entry garage in a neighborhood that basically developed with all front entry garages in the past. The applicant is requesting to do so due to the standards of the neighborhood that they're going to build this new house in, and in deference to our new ordinance that requires side and rear entry.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Are there any questions for Patrick?
No questions, Mr. Mayor, but I need to have the record note that I'm recused on that matter. I represent Mr. Armistead on other matters.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. I'll declare that portion of the meeting open for the purpose of public input. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment? Do we have the applicant available in the audience?
She was on there, but I don't see her now.
I think this might be a slam dunk, so I'm just going to proceed. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor or against? the variance? Hearing none, I'll declare that portion of the meeting closed, and we'll revisit that right when we get to new business. Moving to old business, the variance at 603 and 606 Alcovey Street. This was tabled from last month's meeting on January 12th. Mr. Kelly presented the applicant's request for a variance of the property at 603 and 606 Alcovey Street to reduce the size of two proposed lots in the proposed subdivision, which is currently zoned R1A with conditions, hereby requesting a variance of Article 7, Section 700-1, Table 11, lot size of the zoning ordinance for 603 and 606 Alcovey Street. The applicant is Dwayne Wilson of Pinehurst Homes. This design falls short of the conditional rezone parameters agreed to, which reduce the required lot sizing by granting R1A zoning with conditions. The rezone was approved on May 8, 2018. The lot should conform to the previous rezone, which was granted with conditions. The designer has had over 2.5 years to modify this design for conformance. This was approximate 30% reduction in lot size at that time from 14,000 to 10,000 square feet. The zoning ordinance clearly states all lots in R1A zoning must have a minimum of 10,000 square feet. The recommendation was to deny. I'll open the floor to council members for discussion. And it's council members only.
I have a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir, Mr. Dickinson.
I move to deny the variance. I don't think it's appropriate. I think the purpose of the variance was to increase the yield in the subdivision, and it was caused by the applicant. So I just don't think it would be fair to others who will be similarly situated. So therefore, I move to deny the variance.
I
Thank you,
second
Mr.
that
Dickinson.
motion.
I have a motion to deny and a second by Mr. Garrett. Is there any discussion?
I just have a question there, either from Mr. Dickinson or from whoever did the second, which I couldn't get it. Can you elaborate a little bit on your reason to want to deny this? I mean, this is the person that's, most of the lots would be in compliance. It would just be two with a small variance, not a significant variance on those two. But we have a property owner that's willing to, I guess, build or, put his money out there for this. I don't see harm to the neighborhood or to the city. And I guess that's, I guess that's my question is, what is the harm involved with approving that one?
Well, I think the harm is this. It's not so much a general harm as it is, if you look at what the standards are in section 1430.6, if you go down to the fifth one, and one of the things that we take into consideration is whether the special circumstances surrounding the request for the variance are not the result of acts by the applicant. And I think that's exactly what we have here. You may recall I made the motion to approve his rezone. And what he has done, I think now, is he's come back and said, well, I'd like to cut down the size of two of these lots so that I can get more lots in the subdivision. He's created the problem. And if we say to him, well, you can do this, then the next person who comes along that's created the problem themselves by changing drastically the size of the lot, I don't think you could constitutionally deny it to that person. A fine example of that would be the application that we had that was pulled with regard to the lots over on Boulevard. And so my concern is that if you start approving these, you're going to run into a due process, a substantive due process, and an equal protection argument from any other applicants. And I just don't think we would be able to defend it. So.
And I echo what David said, but also, Larry, when we make motion, everybody get an opportunity to vote. So everybody get a chance to vote their conscience, whether they think it should be approved or not approved.
And I understand that, and I I may vote different from the remainder of the council. That's the reason I wanted to get a further clarification, because as I look at variance requests that come to us, most of the variance requests to us are to enable the applicant to do more with less, generally speaking. That you know, as we look at variances, whether it's a variance to, you know, change if you look up the street there to the Legends, where we approved variances there to allow houses to be closer to the street than what our code would call for. It was because that was what people needed. That's what the applicants needed to do their thing. I mean, it was not something otherwise. If you look at the Vine Street application, which we approved, you know, earlier, the plot size, that's 8,500 square feet minimum. And that's so they could get as many houses as they wanted to in that particular large subdivision. I just think that's, I guess what I'm looking for here, and I understand what Ms. Dixon said, and I'm not disagreeing with him. What I'm looking for, though, is to understand if a person asks for a variance, if we're not going to approve any variance that's there for the purpose of helping the applicant, then there's no reason to have variances. Because that's the large majority of them, that's what they're there for. I'm just trying to understand, and I tried to raise this in our planning meeting because I'm not sure I understand the process that we're going through. If a person's asking for a variance, they're asking for some change to what our code calls for in order for them to do what they want to do with that piece of property. And if we're never going to allow that to happen, that cuts down drastically on the number of variances, you know, we should even be looking at. That's my point.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Any other comments or discussion?
This is Dwayne. Am I not allowed to, am I afforded the opportunity to speak?
No, sir, not tonight. This is council discussion only. Is there any discussion, any other questions?
Mayor, I'm going to abstain from voting due to the fact that Mr. Wilson has been a previous client. We are not representing
Yes.
him now on this property.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I have that noted. This will be a voice vote, yay or nay, to deny the motion.
Mayor,
Larry
can I ask
Bradley.
one other question?
Yes,
Can I
sir.
ask one other question? Is anyone from planning, either Sadie or Brad, have any comments on this?
Mr. Kelly?
No, I'm thinking from
He didn't call Kelly.
either
I
Sadie
don't
or
know
Brad.
if Larry know that those aren't council members, that council member actually vote for this, not Sadie or Brad.
No. I got that. I got who's voting for it, but asking for clarification from Planning Commission?
No, not the
Patrick is
planning
on-
commission, the planning department, Sadie and Brad.
Sadie and Brad are not included in this discussion. This would be either Mr. Kelly or a member of the Planning Commission.
I have a question about the validity of the variance. Reading back through some of the stuff from 2018, if it was never platted and recorded and there was no plan done, can we even consider a variance for this?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
You can consider this variance. This is Paul speaking. You can consider this variance, but there was no plat done back then. There were some conceptual site plans done, but it is appropriate for you to consider this variance, taking into account the various factors that our zoning ordinance lays out to be considered when voting on a variance, which are those that Mr. Dickinson just referenced, and I think he specifically referenced number 5. I believe there's about 7 or 8 particular criteria to be considered by this council when considering a variance application.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll go to the voice vote. Yay or nay, please. Larry Bradley?
Nay, I mean, yay for, I'm sorry, the motion, I'm, nay.
The motion is to deny.
Nay on the motion.
Ross Bradley.
Yay.
Did Ms. Crawford join us?
Yes.
David Hey, Maisha, thank you for joining us. Yay or nay?
Deny.
David Dickinson,
Okay.
Norman Garrett,
No.
let me clarify, Mr. Garrett. You are in favor of denying.
Yes,
variance.
I'm in favor of denying.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Gregory,
Yay.
Nathan Little,
Yay.
Lee Malcolm is abstaining. Motion carries to deny the variance. Thank you. Moving to new business,
Mayor,
variance of,
vote tally on that real quickly for the record.
yes, sir, I have Larry Bradley as a nay. I have Ross Bradley as a yay. I have Maisha Crawford as a denial, which I took as a yay. Is that correct, Maisha?
Yes.
David Dickinson with a yes to deny, Norman Garrett with a yes to deny, Tyler Gregory and Nathan Little both with yeses to deny, and Lee Malcolm abstained.
Okay, so that's a,
So
is that 5 to
so-
1? Did I count that correctly?
5-1. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
6-1.
Go on.
We have 6-1. I'm sorry, Paul.
6 to 1, yes.
Moving to the variance of 1360 Armistead Circle, I'll open the floor to council members for discussion or a motion.
Everything seems in order. I'll move we approve.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
I did it again. I'm sorry. Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving to the application of beer and wine sales at M&S Food Mart. Is the application in order, Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes, Mayor, this application for package sales of beer and wine is in order.
Thank you. Did we get the owner in?
Yes, sir. Mr. Simon is present. I've asked him to unmute his mic.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
here.
Thank you, sir. Is there anything that you'd like to say?
No,
Okay, well, we're glad you're here.
thank you.
Entertain a motion. Entertain a motion, please.
Motion
Move
to
to
approve.
Have a motion by Mr. Norman Garrett to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. Voice votes easy on these. Motion carries. Moving to the first reading of offenses and miscellaneous provisions for the possession of marijuana, the ordinance amendment, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 62 of the Code of Ordinances regarding the city's offenses and miscellaneous provisions and for other purposes. The mayor and the council hereby ordain as follows. Article 1, Chapter 62, Article 1, Section 62(3) of the Code of Ordinances is hereby amended by adding the following section in its entirety. Section 62(3, possession of marijuana. It shall be unlawful for any person to possess 1 ounce or less of marijuana within the corporate limits of the city of Monroe. Any person found guilty of violating this section shall be subject to the penalty as provided in Section 111, provided that any defendant charged with possession of 1 ounce or less of marijuana shall be entitled on request to have the case against such defendant transferred to the court having general misdemeanor jurisdiction in the county wherein the alleged offense occurred. Article 2, all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby repealed. Article 3, this ordinance shall take effect from and after its adoption by the mayor and the council of the city of Monroe, Georgia. This constitutes the first reading the 9th day of February, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Are there any questions?
I got a question for Rosenthal. Is there
Yes.
a fee attached to the marijuana for the 1 ounce of below?
Yeah, the ordinance, we cleaned up the ordinance, but left the penalty provision the same as it was previously. What that does is it refers to the penalties provision of our code of ordinances, which is in section 111. That section mandates that the maximum penalty is $1,000 and 6 months confinement, as with all other city ordinance violations. That being said, in the city of Monroe Municipal Court, in my office as solicitor, we have generally been offering on negotiated pleas for possession of marijuana less than an ounce, simply the payment of a fine, no confinement, and usually that fine has been $750 unless there are aggravating circumstances or extenuating circumstances one way or the other. So the answer to your question is the maximum allowed penalty still remains as all other ordinances, $1,000 maximum and 6 months confinement. However, standard practice with my office as prosecutor or solicitor for Monroe has been to eliminate the request for confinement for possession less than an ounce charges and to simply be a fine payment of $750 on average. Now, sometimes there are more extenuating circumstances and our request or negotiated pleas for the maximum of $1,000. Sometimes there's or aggravating circumstances. Sometimes there's extenuating circumstances and the fine recommendation may be less. But it is not like the city of Clarkston or the city of Atlanta, where they've modified their ordinances in an effort to, as they say, decriminalize the marijuana, where there's a maximum of only like $75 fine.
Is there a reason that we're not looking into something like that?
That is a policy decision for you and your other 8 elected compatriots to address and decide, Mr. Garrett. That's not up for me.
Well, I just want to say something
I think
about
we need
that.
to have that conversation at some point.
I agree with Mr. Garrett.
I do too.
It is something we need to have a discussion about. And this just comes from my experience when I was a municipal judge here and in a couple of other cities. The fines in relation to the offense, and particularly back then, because they were even more, because a lot of folks are being prosecuted under the state statute, and I was seeing people get fined $1,400, $1,500. To me, that's just ridiculous. And I do think at some point in the not too distant future, this council needs to consider just going to some sort of flat fine on. I think that's generally supported by the public. So,
and I think that we went this route because when Mr. Dickinson was the judge, you start looking at things like long-term trying to get a job. Do you have a record? We would rather keep this off a record, but use it as an ordinance violation. So that's the step down that we're taking now. But I agree that's something we need to revisit.
Is there a way we can get this put on the agenda within the next 2 months? To have a discussion about?
That's up to Mr. Probst and the mayor with y'all's direction as to what you want to do.
Yeah.
The reason, just to be clear, the reason why this is before you tonight, because this came up last month, this is simply a cleanup of our ordinance. There was a technical defect in our ordinance and we were cleaning it up. We thought this had gone through in a cleanup about 3 years ago. And for some reason, this cleanup got missed about 3 years ago when we did some other cleanups of various ordinance violations. So all this is, the only purpose that this is solving is a technical defect cleanup. I would suggest that staff get together and talk about, if your directive is, as Mr. Dickinson and Mr. Garrett have suggested, that prior to that happening, that staff get together and provide some input and opinions, because I'm quite certain that Chief Watts may have some comment or input on, suggestions and recommendations. But you guys are the policy decision makers. A few cities in the state of Georgia have done this effort to quote unquote decriminalize marijuana. Still technically there's a state charge and still technically there's a federal charge that could be had. But in terms of the practical realities of what we call writing ordinance tickets or just tickets for weed, a few cities have decriminalized it to where it's a flat lower fine only for possession less than an ounce.
I have a quick follow-up question for Paul. So if we, if as a city, we did that flat fine and lowered it, if extenuating circumstances happened with someone who needed to be charged or whatever, then you could go to the state statute or to the federal statute. Is that correct? Or would that have to be a state offense in some way?
Well, we couldn't go to the federal statute, but the discretion to charge a violator of any alleged crime is always rests with the officer. So the officer has the authority to bring charges under the state statute if they want to. It's a different path. It's a different path of criminal procedure to follow, and it could still be in our court if they bring the state charge. But usually the officer has discretion, or does have discretion there on the side of the road, if you will, to either write the ticket or take the ticket under the state charge and bring it to Monroe Municipal Court, write the ticket under the city ordinance and bring the charge to Monroe Municipal Court, or they can write the ticket under the state charge and take a warrant and take it up to Superior Court. So that discretion is with the chief's officers, and he can, certainly provide more input. And I would strongly encourage, before any major decision is made, for there to be some discussion and communication with the chief and his crew on, positives and negatives of pursuing this concept of, a lower flat fee fine for marijuana possession, less than an ounce, city ordinance.
Thank you very much.
I just have two comments. Mr. Mayor, did we complete the vote on the last agenda item?
On the last agenda item, which was the application of beer and wine?
No, the reading.
There's no vote on this.
This is just a first reading. So
okay, gotcha.
Second reading will be next month.
So my second comment, because I think that the vast majority of us are in agreement, is to give direction to mayor and staff to start putting together and put heads together on what this would look like.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll do that. We'll get with Logan, and he'll get with the team and Chief Watts and team from the PD. So that will obviously be in discussion immediately. But regarding this tonight, it was just first reading, second reading, because we had to have the cleanup, and then we'll move forward with the next step. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we will revisit that next month. Then we need to move to the renewal of property and casualty insurance. It was presented last week for staff's recommendation to approve, but Mr. Seville froze during the discussion, and I don't think we finished it how we should have. So Mr. Bob Seville with Seville Risk Management explained the renewal dates for the property and casualty insurance for 2021. The total premium is $404,347, which is only $5,434 more than last year. He stated the coverage has moved from state national to travelers, generating significant savings in an insurance market where most cities and counties are seeing higher premiums and deductibles. During the time after Mr. Seville's presentation, the video froze and the audio wasn't clear, and we failed to get a vote for recommendation to full council from the committee for approval of the renewal of the property and casualty insurance coverage. Therefore, it's been moved to council for full approval tonight independently. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Have a motion by Mr. Ross Bradley. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, I did not. Is that Nathan Little?
That's
Yeah.
Second by Mr. Little. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do voice vote on this one. Larry Bradley? Appears.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, that's okay. All right, thank you. Ross Bradley.
Aye.
Myosha Crawford.
Yay.
David Dickinson.
Yay.
Norman Garrett,
Yay.
Tyler Gregory,
Yay.
Nathan Little,
Yay.
Lee Malcolm.
Yay.
Motion carries unanimously. And thank you. And then we'll move to the mayor's update. The only thing I have, again, just trying to keep everybody updated on COVID. Our numbers are down a little bit this week, which is really, really good. The hospitals finally get a little bit of breathing room. Our vaccine. Yes, sir.
I got a question for Logan. Last week, he was saying that he was going to check on the people being charged early for their cable bill. What I was told was that they charged everybody for the month of December going into January. And what he said last week was it wasn't supposed to start until the first part of January. Is there a way we're going to credit everybody that was charged early for that?
Yeah, so the bills were not charged with the new cable TV rate until January 1. We'll go through and audit some of those bills. I just pulled up one. Let's say the bill date was 12/30 of 20, and the due date was 1/13. It was it had a old cable TV rate applied to that bill. So because it was billed on December 30th of 20. The subsequent bill was billed out on January 29th, due on February 12th, and it had the new rate applied. So
now, I can't speak for everybody's bills, but I can speak for mine. I paid mine on the 12th, and it had the total charge. And I also got called to somebody else had a total charge. So we need to actually look into that. And if that wasn't warranted that you be charging everybody early, we don't need to be charging everybody early.
yeah, we'll continue to audit that. We'll pull out a bill or two from each billing cycle and make sure that that's not the case.
Let me ask you this. You said you were going to look into mine last week. Do you have an opportunity to do that?
I will. I'll give you a call offline. I've got it right here.
I'll chime in real quick, Mr. Garrett. I'm not aware of anyone getting charged early, but I will look into that. Like Logan said, we'll pull bills from each cycle. It should be every bill that was billed with a January date, a January bill date, because those rates were approved in the 2021 operating budget, which went into effect January 1.
Logan said last meeting that no one would be charged before January the 1st. I know I paid my bill on the 12th, and I was charged a complete charge. So I don't know about, we haven't been charging people, because I know clearly I was charged. I can't speak for everybody's bill, but I definitely speak for mine. And I did have someone call me and ask me about theirs. So I know that we've been charging people the complete price of January, even though they haven't used the whole month of January.
So you're saying you got the whole 115 on your bill, is what you're saying?
I am.
Okay, we'll look at that and talk offline.
So back to COVID, vaccinations. We've got a meeting tomorrow morning with Carl Mara, independent, the National Guard as well. So we'll know more about vaccinations. We're doubling up on those, though, as CVS and Walgreens program is rolled out. So we're on the right path and looking good. And just ask you to encourage your constituents to maintain proper hygiene, proper spacing, and if they choose to wear a mask, it's appreciated. I need a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Garrett and a second by,
Second.
I'll do it.
Second by Ms. Malcolm. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.